Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out Q through R, so let's go do that. We'll start off with Q*bert Rebooted. It's a remake of the original arcade game, and they do include the original arcade game in here. The problem is that the controls for the rebooted version are freaking terrible, so unless you want to pay $5.99 at the moment for just an arcade version of Q*bert, probably not worth the effort picking this one up. Qual Memento. It's a puzzle game where you have to guide the token through a bunch of different puzzle-like levels, and yeah, it's very, very zen. Actually, I'm trying to remember, like, was it? Yeah, you have to guide the bubble or whatever it is through all the different kinds of levels. It's a neat little zen puzzler, and it is very relaxing, and there are a ton of levels and secret levels and stuff to find as well, so yeah, that's actually well worth the time if you're a fan of puzzle games. Probably won't convince someone who isn't a fan of puzzle games, but you know, that's just the way things go. Okay, Race the Sun. This is a minimalistic dodging game where you have to dodge as many things as possible on the ground and in the air while collecting speed boosts to keep going through the level. However, the courses are procedurally generated every day, so it's always different, so you can't memorize a course if you're having trouble with it and then come back to it later. It's got a fair amount of stuff to unlock through it. I'm just not that big of a fan of it due to its minimalism and the fact that it's actually rock hard at times. But yeah, there you go. It's not too bad. It runs alright. Ragnarok Odyssey is a 3D hunting game. It was like one of the very first games XSEED released on this platform. And it's a 3D game where you've got these bloody huge monsters and you have to, you know, obviously slay them, and tiny monsters as well. It's a Monster Hunter ripoff, obviously. And you've got different items and skills you can upgrade, and you can equip cards that give you different bonuses, and you have different swords that you can get, and weapons and all sorts of stuff, and you can change your look, and yeah. It's a pretty obvious Monster Hunter clone. The problem is that this game was actually really badly unbalanced, so that a lot of people actually had a lot of trouble getting past the first major boss, which was the Giant. But there was one class that could basically rip and tear through everything, which was really disappointing. That was fixed with Ace. Unfortunately, the rebalance made me realize just how boring this game was. Like, it doesn't really have that much variety going for it, and they don't really add much on the Ace version, except for, like, a major rebalance of the difficulty. Also, I've noted, they're not using screenshots from the Vita version for some reason for this one, but yeah. This is just, it just has a couple more things in it. It's probably the worst hunting game the Vita has. It's not bad, and you can't sit down and just go brainless through it, but it's just, nah, it's not really worth the time if you've got all the other hunting games to go through. Rainbow Moon. It's a strategy game, a turn-based strategy game, like on isometric grid, with a lot of stuff to do. There's a ton of stats to upgrade, a ton of items to get, lots of quests. The art's very good. We're getting the sequel, Rainbow Skies, at some point. Excuse me. We're getting the sequel Rainbow Skies at some point, and it is a pretty basic turn-based strategy RPG, but at the same time, it's still pretty good. It's pretty slow too, but yeah, it's still pretty damn good, and it's worth a look if you don't like the overall silliness of Disgaea, that's for sure. Rallycopters is a single-player racing game, so the idea is you have to run through a bunch of different courses, and you have to get through as fast as possible without colliding into walls. There's a bunch of different helicopters, and they all have different speed statistics and different handling statistics, so you have to learn all the different kinds of helicopters and try and get through without taking as much damage and being as fast as possible. It's kind of neat. It's pretty precision-based, and its graphical style looks a lot better in movement than it does on these screenshots, but it's fine. It's not bad. It's not great either. I wouldn't go outright recommending it to everyone, but if you're looking for that sort of thing. Ratchet & Clank Full Frontal Assault is terrible. It's a tower defense Ratchet & Clank game. Who thought that was a good idea? That and the port is freaking atrocious. You can jump so high that you go up and out of the camera, and to the point where it's actually really hard to land jumps, but still, it's not a good Ratchet & Clank game at all. It's just like, you only have like 5 levels in it. It's ridiculous. It's really bad. I don't understand why they thought that was a good idea. Ratchet & Clank Collection. The only game that I liked playing from this was Ratchet & Clank 3. And they didn't even get the control scheme on that one right. Ratchet and Clank 1 and 2 didn't run very well either. And they, what's the word I'm looking for? They were a bit... They were a bit of the stranger Ratchet and Clank games that don't play as well. But the port from number 3 was fine, more or less. But all of them run at 30 FPS and not 60. So it's not as smooth an experience as one could hope for. I mean, like... I know I said God of War's 30 FPS didn't bother me, but Ratchet and Clank's 60 FPS smoothness just adds something to the game that most shooters of its kind don't have, which is a little bit disappointing. Rayman Origins is the first of 2 Rayman games to come out on Vita. It's fucking gorgeous. It plays fantastically. It's lovely. It's got all sorts of silly stuff. It's great. It's wonderful. And it's a fantastic game. Rayman Legends kind of added a few extra gimmicks to the game, which really didn't help it out as much, and there were a bunch of levels that were a pain in the ass to play on the touch controls. But they also included the majority of Rayman Origins levels in there too, so if you had to pick between the 2 of them, I'd probably go with Legends, just because it's got more stuff in it. But yeah, they're still both pretty damn good games to begin with. Real Boxing. It's a boxing game ported from iPhones, where you use both analog sticks to control the directions and usage of your punches and blocks, and it's a interesting little arcade game nonetheless. You've got your typical stamina meter and all that, and it's powered by Unreal Engine 3, and it actually runs pretty well. It looks pretty good, but everybody looks like they're fucking plastic. It's a little annoying, and there's trainings and customization and stuff you can do. It's pretty neat. If you're looking for a lightweight boxing experience, you could probably do alright with Real Boxing, but won't really appeal to the heavy hitters. I'll say that much. Speaking of something that doesn't appeal to the heavy hitters, Reality Fighters is a one-on-one fighting game made with AR in mind, so you can display your fighters on a desk or something, and you make custom characters, but they always look fucking terrible. I look like a grey version of Jabba the Hutt with blonde hair. I don't know why. My hair's brown, by the way. And the fighting itself is really stiff. There's no real combo opportunities to speak of. There's some, what's the word? There are some interesting fighting styles in it, but again, it's really stiff and not fun to play at all. I already talked about Red Game Without a Great Name back on Green Game Time Swapper, but the idea is that you go through as a bird, you teleport to different locations to keep yourself out of danger. It gets really hard and frustrating after a while, and it's not a very good game. And then Green Game Time Swapper is just the same thing again, only you can do time-bending mechanics. It's not fun. Don't play it. Real Fishing Masters Challenge is a lot like Let's Fishing Hooked On. You cast in a line with a specific type of bait, you start pulling in a fish, you manage your line tension, and you pull the fish in, and you just do that over and over and over again. Only appeals to a very specific subset of people, and it's got a more down-to-earth story this time. So it's not complete like lolly nonsense like the other fishing game is, but it's still a pretty good game. It's just, again, doesn't really appeal to many people other than fishermen. Admittedly though, despite the fact that it uses like 2D graphics for a lot of its stuff, it still looks bloody beautiful. It's a really good use of like low-budget graphics. Speaking of low budget, Resident Evil Revelations 2. It's a port of Resident Evil Revelations 2. You get all the content with it. The bonus episodes, the raid characters, everything you don't get is through here, and there's not much you don't get. But yeah, the problem with this game is not only does it run terribly, which might not be that big of a deal, considering how slow-paced Resident Evil games usually are, but shooting the zombies is thoroughly unsatisfying. They barely flinch. They don't do anything when you shoot them, and when they fall down, it just feels like you're firing a BB gun. And then you've got the raid mode, which just becomes even worse, because you're pumping a zombie full of 20 bullets, and they're not doing anything, and then they just fall over, and it's thoroughly unsatisfying. People who are into, like, grindy number RPGs might be into raid mode, but, God, I do not like Resident Evil Revelations 2's port, and I'm pretty sure it's because of the port. Maybe if I had a copy of it to play on PS4 or PC, I'd go and have a look, but I don't, so I won't. Resistance Burning Skies is the first FPS made by the people who made the Call of Duty one. And they made it in like a year or so. So it was actually kind of impressive that it came out the way it did. But it's a really not that impressive shooter. It's a first-person shooter, but all the weapons feel weak. The game runs at a terrible frame rate sometimes, and it can get kind of cheap at times with how fast you can die. And it's a clever idea, but it just doesn't work very well. And the multiplayer just gets boring after a couple of hours because all the guns are just so unimpressive and all that. It's not pleasant at all. They really should have gotten a better developer to handle this. And then when fucking Activision took 3 years getting the Call of Duty engine working, and then went and got these guys to do a new Call of Duty game in 6 months, I'm amazed they even got it out the door in time. Retro City Rampage DX. This is it's a retro callback to games of yore on the old NES and Genesis, where there's a ton of retro gaming references, and it's sort of a Grand Theft Auto knockoff where you can like nick cars and shoot lots of people and get lots of points. And yes, like the old Grand Theft Autos, like 1 and 2, not 3 and Vice City and all that. It's an absolutely great game if you get the references. If you don't, you'll probably not have that fun of a time here, but the game itself is actually really well made. And this is actually the updated version, which has a bunch of extra missions. They rebalanced the difficulty, a bunch of extra stuff to do. And it's a really, really good game. And apparently it sold the most on Vita. I think it did anyway. I can't remember exactly for sure, but it sold a lot on Vita to the point where it's well worth that guy releasing more stuff on Vita. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about now. Ridge Racer. It's Ridge Racer, but always online. Only 3 tracks, only 3 cars. The rest are all DLC, but even then you only go up to 9 tracks. And it's just always online. And it's got a leveling system where you'll always be faster if you're a higher level. Fuck that noise. Ring Run Circus is a puzzle game where you have multiple rings and multiple circus freaks. Well, not freaks, but people, performers, actors, who have to go through these individual rings and collect all the stars and the key to the exit and get to the exit. And it's a sort of action-based puzzle game, and it's kind of neat. There's not that much wrong with it, it's just not that engaging, and you do have to do things like avoid enemies a lot, and it can get frustrating after a while. But they do a lot with the concept, and it is pretty fun to play through for a while at least, so, you know, not that bad for $5. Risk of Rain is a port of the 2012, I think it was, platformer roguelike game where you run through a huge area. The game gets very slowly harder as you go, as you can see in that timer up in the top right. You use your different abilities to defeat enemies and bosses and get through the levels and collect lots of items to help you on your way. It's a fun game, sure. The multiplayer online will work fine as long as you're on the same continent, and there's not that many performance drops, which is actually kind of nice. It's an interesting game. Just, I never really got along with it that much. It's I don't like the way that the game has like your 4 main attacks as your only abilities, and then you can't like get more as you go along or something like that. But yeah, it's alright. It's perfectly fine. The port's fine. If you're looking for a portable roguelike that'll actually challenge you, Risk of Rain, because why not, right? Rockbosh's DX is a love note to old ZX Spectrum puzzle games, where you have to go through the entire world. You have to go through all these worlds, and you have to blow up all the enemies and solve all the puzzles to get through the next world. And it's a interesting little game. It's just, it's interesting as a throwback, but as an actual game on its own merit isn't particularly that impressive. But I mean, it's still pretty nice. It's got a bunch of old mini games as well, including the first version of Aqua Kitty, which is kind of neat. But yeah, it's alright. I don't have a problem with it that much. Rocket Birds, I don't want to talk about. Rocket Birds, I didn't really like that much. It's like a 2D platformer with gun shooting sections and that, because it's a weird game like that. You got 2D sections and you have to like keep out of the way of enemies and stuff, and it's got like hostages you need to rescue and stuff. And I didn't really play that much of it because I really didn't get the point. And Rocket Birds 2, I'm waiting for a review code as I record this. So when I get a review code for Rocket Birds 2, I will be doing a video on it. Like, I will give it another shot. Like, absolutely no reason for me not to. I will. Just give me time. Rogue Legacy. It's a 2D platformer roguelike. The idea is that the castle changes that you go into. The castle you go into changes every time you go into it. and you have to collect gold to upgrade your home base. And every time you die, you get a new successor who has a different set of abilities. And the idea is you have to go through every part of the castle, try and get to the big-ass boss fights, and try and take them down. And it's a hell of a lot of fun. There's a ton of stuff to find in the game. There's a ton of different abilities to unlock. Lots of ways to level up and get interesting stuff happening. And yeah, it's got a ton of extra content and stuff as well from the PC version. So yeah, well worth picking that one up. Rollers of the Realm. It's a pinball game that's an RPG. So you level up and collect gold and stuff by playing on the tables, defeating the enemies by rolling your ball into them. All your different party members have different abilities, and you've got a lot of XP and gold and mana down there for special abilities and stuff. And there's a whole story behind it, and it's actually really kind of nice. Like, it's a nice change on how pinball games work. And it's well worth picking up if you like pinball. And at that price, absolutely, right? Royal Defense is all 8th floor, so we'll ignore that. I haven't played these two rugby games here, but, I mean, this game must not have done very well if it's already down to 1999, and it's 1.71. And this game, 2.8 out of 5 rating, so yeah, that must not be very good. Run Like Hell is a runner game. I don't like runners very much. But yeah, it is basically you just run like hell, try and avoid different obstacles and all that. It's just, yeah. And there is a multiplayer racing mode, which is kind of neat, but yeah, still not that interesting. I did do a video on that. Run, Sackboy, Run. Another runner that's not even here. So I don't even know if it's still up there or not, but same deal as Run Like Hell, except you collect bubbles and costume items and stuff, and it's just, what's the fucking point? So yeah, that was the end of that. That was the end of Q through R. I'll be back next time for S through T. I'm almost there. Almost. 4 to go. This has been Blue Maxima, and I'll see you all next time.